Welcome back to the show. Today we're exploring a question that comes to us from an anonymous viewer. It's a question that might sound a bit silly at face value, but as you'll see, the more we unravel what's at the heart of the question, it's anything but silly. And it's a question I've received in one form or another many times over the years. The viewer asks this: I am fascinated with the idea of lucid dreaming and astral projection, but the idea kind of frightens me. I'm sure this comes from my traditional religious upbringing, but I fear I'd open myself up to forces we're not meant to tamper with. I've heard so many terrifying stories about seeing demons and sleep paralysis that trigger my old Catholic programming. I know how crazy this sounds, but I have to admit that a part of me can't rule out the idea of being attacked by a demon in those conscious realms. Help! Okay, this question demands an explanation of sleep paralysis and why people often see, hear, and even feel very frightening images during these states. But we need to address the belief part of this problem first. Those of you who have been keeping up with my work here a bit know that I come from a more agnostic atheist position where I personally feel the notion of actual demons from hell does not deserve any more serious consideration than vampires or zombies or werewolves. However, I do take that question and those fears very seriously. As we're going to cover, it really isn't a question to be scoffed at. So with that in mind, please know that I'm not being flippant or condescending when I first say that the most assured way to never have problems with demons out there on those other planes of consciousness is to not believe in demons. But I know that can be easier said than done. I've met quite a few people over the years who just couldn't figure out why even just entering a lucid dream state remained elusive to them, no matter how many techniques and philosophies they acquired, who later realized that there was a religious belief hiding on a very subtle subconscious level which was holding them back from tapping into these realms. Especially if, at a young, impressionable age, you've been taught about the concept of Satan and demons and a fiery pit of eternal torture that might await you after you die if you don't live your life quite right. When we're children, we don't have the tools to be skeptical of what other people tell us, especially the adults who've cared for us, the people who told us, the stove is hot, and they were absolutely right. And nearly every religious or spiritual tradition that's ever emerged on this planet, from shamanism to Hinduism, Buddhism, Islamic traditions, and every iteration of Christianity, speaks of powerful entities filled with malice and rage and trickery which exist beyond this ordinary plane of reality we're all familiar with. Even if you've completely reevaluated all of your beliefs now, and your outlook of this world looks nothing like what you were taught, maybe now you've realized that all the talk about demonic forces in religion were metaphors for what we humans are actually capable of. This is what can happen. You might get your first taste, in one form or another, of these unusual states of consciousness, where you know you've touched something that truly lies beyond the typical bounds of our limited perception of reality. This may indeed be a brush with sleep paralysis, where you were treated to a very realistic experience of a massive dark figure looming over you and overpowering you, or in more rare extreme cases like a near-death experience where, even though you may never be able to prove it to anyone else, you personally know that you saw what was going on beyond your body. Suddenly finding out that some part of this paranormal stuff actually is real can send us into a panic. It's a shock to the system to be suddenly thrust from even a very open-minded position where you really do believe that our consciousness isn't bound to the mind or the body over to, now I know it isn't. Now I know my consciousness isn't limited to my brain. Now you know that at least some of those fantastic stories you've heard do have some truth to them. Well, then what else is real? So what other stories have I been told over the years that are true? And that's when, like it or not, your mind might revisit everything you've been taught about God or spirituality or heaven or hell, angels or demons. And all things being equal, how much crazier is the concept of demons once you know astral projection is actually possible? The best I can advise is don't feed the trolls. Don't give those dark concepts a moment of your time or an ounce of your energy. It's so much more about what you take in there than what you'll actually find in those other planes of reality. Let's go down the multiverse rabbit hole for just a moment to bring some more light to this question about hell and demons. As we've covered, once your consciousness moves beyond the physical body, you may indeed be able to witness your surroundings in real time, exactly as it is really unfolding. You might observe your own body, or you may see what's going on in another part of your house or your neighborhood or even another part of the country. And if all the right conditions are in place, you might be fortunate enough, like I've been on a number of occasions, where you're able to later confirm that precisely what you observed unfolding in that other location was indeed accurate. As we've covered on this channel, consciousness is not ultimately bound to any one location or time. So what does that mean for us if the many worlds theory in quantum physics is correct, and there truly is a multiverse? It would follow that our consciousness also isn't bound to any one universe either. Mathematically speaking, if the universe is infinite, that means that somewhere out there, every possible viable combination of matter and energy exists. If it can exist, it does exist out there. If it can happen somewhere out there, it will. So now, take that picture I just painted and plug that back into the fear of finding yourself in a truly terrifying place, or coming face to face with something that, for all means and purposes, fits the definition of demon. Can you find yourself in an ugly place full of pain and suffering with, terrifying beings that you don't find on this planet? If everything I've just said about the nature of our consciousness and the cosmos is true, then the answer has to be yes. Now, I personally haven't astrally traveled to anywhere that even came close to fitting the typical descriptions of hell, and I've never seen any entities that looked like demons, but just because I haven't observed it doesn't mean it's not out there somewhere. The multiverse is a really big place, so maybe you could find yourself observing some hellish landscapes or dangerous, vicious beings that have all the same kind of psychological illnesses we find in the worst human beings. But so what? What can really hurt you when you're outside the physical body? What can you do to consciousness? If you've been following my channel at all, you know that my assertion is that what we call our awareness is essentially the nature of empty space, of absolute nothingness. How can you inflict damage on the most fundamental force of the cosmos, which exists prior to all mass and energy? It was never born, it will never die. You can't hurt it, ever. However, we know there is something that can be done to our awareness. On some level, we know that consciousness can be fooled. You can trick it into believing it is a something, to associate itself, identify itself with a something, with a name, which is what we're currently experiencing. Once consciousness identifies as a thing, you can convince it that it is small and weak and in danger. And here's where we come full circle. It comes back to what information, what stories you identify with. You don't want to be attacked by demonic forces out there? Then take your experiences at face value and don't wrap another story around what you observed. Maybe you find yourself in a lucid dream inside a dark forest where you're fully conscious and suddenly you see some evil-looking creature peering out from the shadows, and it startles you enough to leap out of the dream space and wake up. Don't dramatize it. Don't take an experience that lasted a few moments and start writing a fantasy novel around it where you feed the notion that you're being hunted by some demon in your dreams. You're the one holding all the cards. You're the one who is ultimately making the decision of which concepts to hand your attention and power over to. And furthermore, what is a demon anyway? What do they really look like? When you confidently identify something as an angel or demon, you have to admit you're helping support this narrative. that same lesson applies to the forms and shapes that emerge in lucid dreams, or the astral plane, or sleep paralysis, or this daily realm we collectively share. I can't tell you how many people have shown me lens flares in photos and they see angels or evil faces or the face of Mother Mary or Jesus Christ himself. How do we know that's Jesus? Let reality be what it is. Which brings us to the trouble and confusion surrounding sleep paralysis, which is still a poorly understood phenomenon of the human body. But it's also a gateway that many lucid dreamers have to sort of pass through to get to the higher states of consciousness. It offers the perfect setup. Body is asleep, your mind is awake. Neurologists generally agree that our bodies are wired in such a way that when we enter REM sleep, the brain releases the neurotransmitters GABA and glycine to switch off those specialized cells which control muscle movement. Why our nervous systems evolved to do this is up for debate, but many sleep specialists believe there may have been an evolutionary advantage to not act out what's going on in our dreams. But what happens for some of us is we become conscious and aware right in the middle of this event. We mentally wake up, which leaves our awareness in this sort of in-between state, caught between the waking and the dream world. Our brain is engaged in the REM state, but we're also very conscious of the body, which is in a state of partial paralysis. You can still breathe normally though. This can send you into a full-blown panic, not just because you've now suddenly found yourself trapped in a tomb of sorts, but your mind is dreaming, so it's using that very real sensory input of feeling like it's encased in concrete, and it's weaving that information into a hyper-real scenario in full color, sound, and even sensation. And for many people, including myself, you can open your eyes and you can kind of look around. However, you're in this bizarre in-between state, so what you're seeing may be a combination of what is actually in your room and what we call hypnagogic imagery. And so a common theme the mind plays out is one where we're being attacked, held down, or smothered by some powerful force that's trying to kill us. I've now dealt with sleep paralysis hundreds of times over the years, and even though I've learned to control my fear and breathe through it, I'm still shocked at how terrifying it can be. Now, I was fortunate enough that my parents never fed me any kinds of horrifying stories about hell or demons or anything like that, so when this happens, my mind deals with it a lot more directly at face value. I don't hallucinate being attacked by monsters. It's usually more like I feel like I just woke up and found myself buried alive or smothered under a giant rock or something. Remember, the brain's job is to create the closest picture it can of our reality from the information it's taking in from the senses. For most of us, when we can't move our arms or our legs, it's because something bigger or stronger than us is preventing us from doing so. And yet physically, we can't hear or feel or see what this mysterious force is. So that leaves a giant gaping black hole for our imagination to fill in the blanks with amorphous, shadowy entities that are pinning us to the bed. It's why the term shadow people is so common in the lucid dream realms. So again, the solution to handling that is calming down and remembering the truth of the matter as I just described it. There's nothing in the room with you. You're perfectly safe. Get your breathing under control and stop feeding the narrative that you're under attack somehow. If you can do that, again, you now have the perfect conditions to enter a fully lucid dream state, or what I and countless others learned we could do from that point is to consciously move beyond the boundaries of the physical body. If that idea fascinates you, go check out the discussion I had with Celine Smith on the wild technique. I hope this has helped bring some clarity and reason to this conversation. Even though the astral plane isn't always just rainbows and bliss, remember that nothing can really harm you out there unless you hand your good sense over to a story of being attacked or possessed by evil forces. And some people will intentionally do just that. They tap into these techniques in the hopes of finding adventure and drama. Adventure, a Jedi craves not these things. and they will defend their version of a wild story where they're out there battling demonic forces. And that can get you into a lot of trouble and confusion. Not to mention, all the drama blinds you from the deeper truths at play. This world of ours offers more than enough drama. We don't need to, pull this into the rest of the cosmos at large. And as always, you're always welcome to ask me any questions in the comments section below. Yes, I really do read them, and if you have a genuine comment or question, just give me time. I will be happy to reply. Thank you so much for watching. Love and peace to all of you. Until next time.